Our next speaker is Dave Wulf. He's the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Infrastructure Protection for DHS. There's going to be about a 2-minute lag here while we drop Austin off the phone and pick Dave up. So I can't answer any questions, not about what Austin just said, so we'll just wait. And Rich Moran will let me know when we have Dave on the phone. I hope this has been informative so far. I think it's been really interesting. If you want to run over and grab some coffee, now is a good 2-minute time to do that. And as soon as Dave comes online, we'll get him going.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Are we good on the audio?
Hello, Dave. This is Pat Diamond. Can you hear us?
I sure can.
All right. Well, I've already introduced you, so we all know who you are.
Awesome.
So if you'll just tell me when to advance the slides, I'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so you're on. You want me to go to the first slide?
What do you think? What do you count as the first slide? The one with my name on it?
It's just your title. It's just your title slide.
Okay, yeah, that's probably good.
Okay, you're on.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Pat. I really appreciate it. Really excited to have the opportunity to talk to you all this morning. Appreciate the invitation. Very sorry not to be able to get up there in person. It does turn out we had a little bit of a glitch with funding for the government over the past few days. I don't know if you guys caught that story. Totally made the news. But I won't bore you with that. But the situation did make it a little bit tricky to get up to New York in person, and we were busy shutting down our little corner of the government yesterday, and today reopening our little corner of the government. But on the bright side, excited that technology is working for us today. And maybe on a brighter note, given that I'm still here in Washington, I am surrounded here in the room today by my team of PNT experts. So Kate Ledesma, Jim Platt, Mike Strifolino, Katie Baker. So I'm sure that they will be enjoying watching me try to navigate the complexities of GPS vulnerabilities and our path forward here at DHS. But I think even more importantly, they'll be here to answer any tough questions you guys might have. I'm totally ready to take the easy ones, though, so feel free to push those my way. So by way of a little bit of introduction, I am an attorney by trade, completely recovered on that front, though, and I came into this role of Deputy Assistant Secretary for Infrastructure Protection just about a year ago. Having spent the previous few years running our chemical security programs, or regulating security at high-risk chemical facilities, preventing terrorists from blowing them up or diverting chemicals and using them in attacks. So, I was very much focused on a specific handful of our critical infrastructure sectors, those with kind of a big play in the chemical world, our chemical sector, our oil and natural gas sector, our food and agriculture sector on the fertilizers front, sprinkle in some labs and racetracks and a few other places, but a reasonably bounded situation to the extent that 30,000 plus facilities can be considered kind of reasonably bounded. But when I came into this job, I had to start thinking about all of our critical infrastructure sectors, so all 16, about their interdependencies, their vulnerabilities, about how those vulnerabilities intersect with the array of threats out there: terrorism, state actor threats, cyber threats, natural disasters, space weather. I have to say I hadn't really thought much about space weather previously, electromagnetic pulses, and so on. And my first month in, I many days felt like my head was going to explode. There's just so much to think about and to do in this arena. And at some point during that first month, when I was sure I had heard it all, some assortment of this crew around the table here came in to brief me on our position, navigation, and timing-related activities, and on GPS vulnerabilities, highlighting really all the ways that GPS is critical to national security and to our economy. I believe I've seen a figure of upwards of $50 billion in gross economic benefits of GPS domestically. So I think we can maybe move to slide 2, if that's the slide with all the pictures on it, hopefully. I'm hoping we have a slide with a bunch of photos. So GPS cuts across every one of the 16 designated critical infrastructure sectors. It enables autonomous agriculture, port operations, mobile communications, the functioning of our electric grid, key to our transportation systems. And, of course, with regard to timing specifically, it's key to the ability of our financial markets and our banking system to function effectively. So I will admit that, all of this new information I gleaned about GPS did have me yearning just a bit for the relative simplicity of those 30,000 chemical facilities, chemical weapons, and explosives precursors. So, simpler times for sure, but, I've more or less gotten over that. So pressing on, up on the screen, you're hopefully seeing a depiction of a few of the areas in which GPS plays a critical role across our critical infrastructure sector. So power grid, supply chains, industrial control systems up there, emergency services, transportation, shipping, telecommunications, and, of course, financial markets. So if we could go to the next slide, the why are we concerned slide. So, there's really no question but that just as we are on alert for the rudimentary sorts of adversary attacks on our public gathering places, vehicle ramming, explosives, active shooters, and as we're working to mitigate those types of vulnerabilities and other vulnerabilities, and as we certainly recognize and strive through a variety of means to address the threat posed by things like chemical terrorism, threat to various cyber systems that are so important to the security and resilience of our critical infrastructure. We also, of course, need to continue working to address that vulnerability presented by the fact that, GPS is truly a single point of failure for PNT data in some arenas for certain owners and operators of critical infrastructure. GPS signals, of course, are vulnerable to deliberate jamming, to spoofing, to space weather, and to the extent they're intermingled with IT systems, they may be susceptible to a range of those cyber threats, and, of course, susceptible to system anomalies, for instance, weak rollover type events, to include the one we are anticipating in April of next year. So those also present a vulnerability. I should mention on that weak rollover front that later this year we are anticipating publishing some best practices on that front well in advance of the anticipated rollover. And, I can tell you with regard to the threat, and, I won't get into specific threat reporting in this forum, but, the threat to GPS is a very real and a very relevant one in our view, and one that we need to continue taking seriously as an extended critical infrastructure protection community. And, I'll say, a year into this job, I've been very gratified to see the extent to which our extended community is taking this threat seriously, and to see the attention that these efforts have been receiving, not only here at DHS, but across the interagency community, at DOD, at the Department of Transportation, and also, I think, really importantly, across private sector owners and operators of infrastructure and with other key stakeholders. And in this regard, I think I'd really be remiss not to thank ADIS for its partnership, convening forums such as this one, and bringing together key players to help us as a community to chart our course forward. So if we could move to the next slide. So what are we doing? We are, not sitting still. We're not sitting still. You haven't been sitting still as an extended critical infrastructure community. Congress has focused on the GPS vulnerability issue through the National Defense Authorization Acts of 2017 and 2018. The 2017 Act called on the government, so an effort we have been leading in cooperation with DOD and DOT, called upon us to validate PNT user needs and to assess alternative capabilities. And the 2018 Act, as you all probably know, contains a requirement to demonstrate one or more backup GPS systems. So the goal, of course, is that these efforts will ultimately inform national level policy making regarding the prospect of a backup system to complement GPS. So moving to the next slide, if we could. We are working hard to finalize the results of the validation studies and the assessments called for by Congress in the 2017 NDAA. We've had Johns Hopkins, the RAND organization, Murray State University, as well as our partners at DoD and DOT working on this with us. We did conduct dependency studies to validate precision timing requirements for relevant infrastructure sectors. And of course, this included the financial services sector. And our assessment, and this is probably not super big breaking news to all of you who work in this arena every day, is that the financial sector is very heavily reliant on GPS as a source for accurate precision timing tied to the coordinated universal time. It is critical for the effective functioning of equity and other markets. It is key to the national market system, and it's key to the operation of ATMs. So if we can go to the next slide, please. The way ahead, we have completed the timing-focused piece of the studies, and we'll be looking to release this piece in the not-too-distant future. And overall, we are looking to this coming summer to have the full set of studies out along with our analysis of alternatives. Want to say a special thank you to all of you who have contributed to these study and assessment efforts to this point. And along those lines as well, we will be publishing in the next month or so a request for information. So a request inviting industry and members of the public to give us your sense of the considerations applicable to the various systems that are out there and that are capable of delivering PNT data. So, we'll use this information to inform our analysis of alternatives, which we also expect to be completed by June. So our plan after June is to move into addressing the NDAA 2018 requirements, and on that front, we will aim to complete the backup demonstration effort, mindful of the June 19 congressional deadline. So, a lot of work to come over the next year and a half. I think probably worth mentioning as well that our Office of Science and Technology is working to leverage testing efforts in order to begin the development of voluntary standards for competent receivers. So receivers that are resistant to jamming and spoofing activities. This is work that we are doing in coordination with NIST, with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So certainly more to come on that front as well. Can we move to the next slide? So mitigating the risk. What can you do to work with us? How can we work together? So, like everything in the Homeland Security arena, we at DHS really cannot do this alone. To get where we need to be to mitigate GPS vulnerabilities, we need to work with our government partners, and really very importantly, we need to work with owners and operators of critical infrastructure and folks like you all who work every day in the financial services sector and other relevant sectors. We really do need your help in a number of different ways. First, we need your help, your focus to implement as relevant and appropriate the best practices we have published with respect to the mitigation of GPS vulnerabilities. Need your help in the conduct of your own assessments of how you would react to the loss of precision timing capability in your organization and your own systems, and encourage you to think through developing and resourcing contingency plans. partnering with our Office of Science and Technology on the tests it continues to conduct, and helping us as a full community to really understand the vulnerabilities we need to address, and really helping us to spread the word, to enhance information sharing, to enhance response activities, and overall coordination to address these risks. So, again, this is not something we can do, not something we should be doing alone. I expect that there are, few people in the world who understand some of these issues better than those of you in the room up there today. So, we really do need your help. We really do want and need your input as we move forward. Can we go to the next slide, please? Of course, no shortage of resources, guidance documents, publications available on this topic, to include those best practices guides mentioned earlier. The gps.gov website is certainly a worthwhile one-stop shop for all your GPS-related information needs. So if you have not been there, I encourage you to take a look. A lot of good resources on that website. And if we could move to the final slide, or slide 9, I would say with respect to those resources, the same really goes for broader cyber vulnerabilities. So, I certainly would encourage you to plug into resources offered by our National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center, our NCIC, which is our 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week cyber situational awareness and incident response and management center. There are a variety of tools available through the NCIC and through the cyber-focused piece of our organization. Variety of services available to help you to recognize, to prevent, and mitigate the impacts of cyber attacks, including teams that can parachute in, literally parachute in. They won't actually give us parachutes, but they do come on site. They can work with you to address cyber attacks. And, on the cyber front, for the steady state, we certainly have available to you risk assessment tools, cybersecurity advisors, and other resources. So, please feel free to reach out with respect to any of these resources, either GPS or broader cyber-focused activities, to me, to our team, or on the cyber front, direct to the NCIC. There is a link on this slide in that regard. So, good way to plug in on this front. So I have kind of sped through the deck a little bit, hopefully not too quickly, but I will call it quits with that. Again, I do really appreciate the invitation. Definitely very sad not to have been able to get up there in person, but certainly hope to have the opportunity to see you all next year or at another appropriate juncture, and very much looking forward to working with all of you as we move forward over the next couple of years. So thank you. Happy to take any questions you guys might have. Happy to push off any of those tough ones again to Kate. But I think that's about all I've got. So thank you again.
Dave, thank you so much. And we have time for several questions, so if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Hi, David. This is Thad Allen. There was supposed to be a P&T XCOM this week that was canceled by the government closure. I wonder if you care to comment on when that's going to be rescheduled, and if you could address adjacent spectrum interference. Thank you.
So we don't. Thank you, Admiral, for the question. We will certainly strive to reschedule the XCOM at the nearest possible opportunity. We are getting back up, getting our legs back under us on that front, but more to come there. Can I toss?
And more information on the spectrum interference, we'll have that after that XCOM occurs. So, yeah, apologies for not being able to provide more information on that right now from the DHS perspective, but we will certainly have more on that after the XCOM occurs.
Thank you. Leon, you have a question? We've got another question from Heiko Gerstung from Meinberg.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. One question I have is that you were mentioning that the telecom world, basically the telecom networks, are a highly critical infrastructure, and I wonder what you think about the power industry and basically the power grid, because as far as I see it, if power goes away for a certain amount of time, every other critical infrastructure is basically down. So that's, I would have expected that you come to the conclusion that the power grid is the most critical infrastructure affected by for example, a GPS outage or something.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I think certainly the power grid, the electric sector, is of absolute critical importance. It's one of the sectors we consider a lifeline sector. Without which we have cascading impacts across the system. So, power, communications, emergency services. There's no one most critical sector in my view, but absolutely the electric grid is way up there in terms of the things that kind of keep us up at night as we think through fostering security and resilience, and absolutely critical.
Thank you, Dave. Got another question from Mr. Leon Lobo.
Hi, thanks very much for the presentation. I wonder whether you could comment on the status of ELORAN as the potential backup system for GPS.
No, glad to, and thank you for the question. So ELORAN is certainly an alternative. It is among the alternatives we will be analyzing in our analysis of alternatives. So next steps. We won't be ready to think. We'll be ready to think about next steps. So we won't be ready to talk about next steps until we've completed that analysis of alternatives. So I would say more to come there this summer. We'll expect to have the analysis completed in the June timeframe. And as mentioned, we'll hope to have some significant input from across the community in response to the request for information that we will be publishing in the next few weeks, in the next month.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think we have time for one more question. Any others? Yes, Mark Weiss has a question for you, Dave.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm consulting with Booz Allen now, but I used to work with NIST, and I'm going to present the talk for Stefan Jeromish of NIST. And you commented that you're collaborating with NIST on some of this timing security. Can you say anything more about that? What kinds of things are you doing with NIST?
So yeah, no, absolutely appreciate the questions. That work, relating to standards, competent receivers, is in the relatively early stages. So I think we'll have more for you on that front. But NIST is certainly the standard-setting go-to organization. And excited to be working with them on this front. So more to come there. Of course, we're talking about voluntary standards, and I think standards that done right will add a lot of value within this community. So more to come there. Sorry, I don't have additional information right now.
Got one more question from Tom Pfeiffer from BAH.
Hey, thanks so much for the presentation. I just have a quick question about the NCEC, and it's great cyber situational awareness, incident response management center. What kind of feedback gets back out to industry? I know you're seeing it, maybe addressing it. tactically, but is there some holistic or strategic feedback that people can have some sort of lessons learned?
Yeah, do you have a particular topic area in mind?
No, I'm just thinking mostly about the timing associated with financial transaction or anything like that, any of the spoofing of the GPS timing.
Yeah. So, my general understanding is that the NCIC, prioritizes getting information out across the relevant communities. So, with respect to that, with respect to other vulnerabilities, certainly prioritizes the sharing of threat indicators across relevant infrastructure sectors, and with respect to timing, vulnerability, spoofing, and jamming, I think it would be a similar approach. So, I think you can look for that to be a continued priority for the NCIC. We can get you some additional information on that front and plug you in with the relevant folks there, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Dave. I think that's all the questions. I want to thank you very much for your participation. Too bad you're not here, but you certainly did a good job of sharing DHS's point of view with us, and I think we all appreciate that. So let's give Dave a hand. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it, and hope to be up there in person next year.
Good.